This is how Uncharted 4 starts. And it sets the tone for not a fun, action-packed video game like the ones before it, but a darker, more introspective look into the fortune hunter. Even the box art and title suggest this. But what is a game but a miserable pile of pixels? The Uncharted series has always been known for its memorable set pieces, Hollywood storytelling, and beautiful graphics. And I could report that all of these and more are in this game, but this is what hinders the final game. But Sean, you might say, this is amazing, it's exactly what I want, and sure, yeah, it might be. But the problem is that the game is already headlining many Game of the Year lists and many people's best game of all time. There's a lot of marketing buzzwords in what people are saying about this game. I'll try to keep the first part free of spoilers. And at 16 hours, I spent most of my time rolling my eyes. I wish this game would just pick up its pace and actually give me something exciting. The thing is that there's no really new mechanics early on in the game that makes the gameplay interesting. Yes, there's a grappling hook that you get at the very beginning of the game, but then again, that's at the very beginning of the game. A new climbing mechanic that was much needed in the whole series makes climbing more interesting. Problem is that it occurs towards the end of the game. A lot of this game feels very bloated and not very memorable, and that's my major gripe with this game, being memorable. While the other games had to battle against a generic plot and average gameplay, at least they had really memorable set pieces. My favorite is the iconic one from the beginning of Uncharted 2, the one that made J.J. Abrams say that it's his best opening to a video game, movie, or even TV show. There's actually only one standout set piece in this whole game, and if you saw the E3 demo, you've already seen it before. When playing this game, I kept thinking about the Order 1886, which is basically a steampunkish Uncharted clone. There's a focus on cinematic qualities, mediocre gunplay, and climbing. I feel like Uncharted saw the criticism that people had that the Order 1886 was too short and just extended the game to be longer than Uncharted Drake's Fortune and Uncharted 3 combined. There's a new dialogue tree mechanic that's only used about 5 times and doesn't really add anything to the game except for in this part where you get to choose your witty remark.
Have you had enough? Or do you want to keep being a smartass?
Well, you know, being a smartass has gotten me this far in life. Why quit now?
All the problems from the previous games are here. Sometimes it's really hard to determine where to jump in this game, and when you think you got the right spot, and then... yeah. Climbing in this game is just an interactive cutscene. It's never been very interesting, but at least the other games didn't really spend too long on it, as this game does. But I would have to say the grappling hook is pretty fun. The most fun I've actually had with this game was messing with all the bonus features you unlock at the very end of the game. Changing the art style to shell shaded and making voices really deep was the most satisfying part of this game.
What are you giving them? Now you have to stay here with me all weekend instead of going on retreat with everyone else? I don't care. Yes, that is the crux of the problem.
The gameplay is at its best when you're running around like a crazy fortune hunter, scaling walls and swinging down like Spider-Man and punching the bad guy out, which is why I've always felt that it was weird that this franchise has been so insistent on its cover shooting mechanics that are just blah. Which is why I recommend the easiest setting when playing this game. Makes the whole game more fun. But one thing you haven't seen before in any game is the visuals. Though I wish that the game was in 60 FPS, this is clearly the prettiest console game. The cutscenes are mostly real time, meaning that transitions between cutscene and gameplay is almost unnoticeable. I say mostly because there are pre-rendered cutscenes in this game. Many people say that this game is very cinematic, but anyways, this is one of the best presentations of an Uncharted game. Animations are detailed and make Uncharted 3's animation looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. The thing is that with having real-time cutscenes, there are still some goofs just like in any play, but most of this music just hides in the background in the game. The only other time I noticed the music was because I was trying to find Nate's theme. Which is in the very end of the game when I was looking at the footage I recorded. They decided to put it at the end of the game? Really? So, are you hyping me for the game that I just finished, or something else that's gonna happen after the credits? Oh, no? Okay. Without revealing too much, the story for the Uncharted game is probably the worst of the whole series. But Sean, you might say, that's kind of hyperbolic. To which I would say, no, what's hyperbolic is to call this the best game story of all time. Even though the other games are cheesy as heck, at least they are fun. Nate goes from location to location trying to track down this treasure, which turns out to be in this lost city. Turns out the treasure has some kind of power that the cartoonishly evil bad guy is trying to get. Nate kills the bad guy, saves the day. Really simple. The difference between this and Uncharted 4 is that this game is trying for a more darker tone, as indicated from the title, box art, and main menu. Neil Druckmann, the writer for The Last of Us and Uncharted 4, said that with this game, he was trying to break down Nathan to his lowest point. He also said that the ending would be divisive for players, that they would either love it or hate it, and that it made playtesters cry. The plot of this game is not memorable at all. First of all, let me point out, I would not nitpick this plot if it wasn't for this game's severe pacing problems and overall applause for its story. The game constantly repeats itself over and over in its gameplay, and its story is kind of slow. The bad guy is not really a good driver of the plot and does really nothing but oppose the Drakes. I also feel like Nate's brother Sam was poorly written. He was very indistinguishable from his dialogue from Nate. I guess the two of them are more like clones. They both share the same sense of humor and gave the same kind of witty remarks. If it wasn't for the subtitles, I really wouldn't have been able to distinguish the two from each other, which is kind of interesting because it seems like they added Sam's tattoos to further put the point that, oh, Sam is free-willed, but let's just put these tattoos to bring the point home, because we couldn't do that through dialogue or as through his actions or something else. And then I kind of have these problems with talking about the story without spoiling the game. So then I kind of have problems with talking about the story without spoiling the game. That's a spoiler warning for those who didn't get it yet. I'm going to talk about the story, so spoilers. You've been warned. So the game starts off with a boat chase to the island, and it's all exciting and everything, and then Nate falls off the boat. The main problem is with this intro is that it's trying to really invoke the beginning of Uncharted 1 with the narrative conceit of Uncharted 2. It doesn't really do the latter very well. The intro for Uncharted 2 caused the player to figure out things as Drake was also. It added new questions as it answered them, so that when the game flashes back in time, the player is left wondering, how did Drake get there and if he's going to make it out alright. Uncharted 4 starts off and you already know what's going on. The game flashes back towards Drake's childhood, and it gives a climbing tutorial, which is fine and dandy if it wasn't going to be one later on, kind of ish. The grappling hook is also introduced here as a gameplay mechanic, which brings in the gripe that video games tend to have when they do flashback / prequel things. The fact that the grappling hook was introduced to Nate as a versatile tool for climbing and stuff makes one wonder why he never used grappling hooks in his later adventures. It sure would have helped him on multiple occasions, but apparently, yeah, he totally never chose to bring one. The game flashes forward a bit to a prison, a clue to the treasure, and then a prison escape. Problem is that the cause of said prison escape just seemingly happens out of nowhere. The writers want to portray Rafe as a spur-of-the-moment murderer, when it makes no sense, as throughout the plot he does everything in his power to avoid murdering. It actually makes no sense for Rafe to stab Vargas, as it's stated later on. Rafe only wants the glory. He really doesn't want the money. He just wants to accomplish something for himself. But yet we have a reason to hate him. We're causing a chase scene that caused our brother to get killed, which is played off as if we're supposed to believe that Sam was dead, even though we know he's still alive. It's as if the writers are trying to explain why Drake's brother wasn't in the other games. Flash forward to the present and we get even more exposition. Eventually, Nate's brother, Sam, shows up to give the call of action, almost 2 hours into the game. Then we have to play another prison break sequence that only exists because it's been 2 hours since we shot anything. This shootout was unnecessary and boring. Eventually, the brothers go to Scotland, where Rafe has hired a private military group to search for Avery's tomb, which begs the question, why did Rafe partner with a private military group? Like, seriously, why not sponsor a University of Indiana Joneses or any fortune hunters? Just grab a bunch of fortune hunters and they would be able to solve your problems, and you could help out too and pretend like you did most of the work and take the glory for yourself. I know a lot of universities that would just probably do it for free. They don't really care about the glory. They just want the artifacts. Rafe could take all the glory. Heck, you could even use the science to just figure this stuff out. We're able to do thermal scans into the ground to figure out what's in there. So why can't we do that here? A lot of the gameplay in this area is very repetitive. It's alright to have a rolling crate puzzle or two, but to have this many in different locations across this game is kind of much, because we see the same crate. This whole Scotland area could have been integrated in another area to make them more interesting. If you really think about it, the Drakes have instigated this whole conflict. They stole the cross that Rafe was going to purchase, then they trespassed on his property and killed his guards. It doesn't really make sense why Nate didn't go to Rafe in the first place. Even if the two didn't get off on the right foot when they last met, they never really had to kill each other to get the treasure. Then the brothers moved to Madagascar, and that is finally where the game really picks up. The open areas allow for more sandboxish, but still linear progression. It was generally fun to climb the towers, only to jump down and punch a guy out. This area made it feel almost like a Far Cry game. The game continues to the city where you do two really dull puzzles, but then there's a really awesome set piece. The brothers later go to an island where Libertalia is located, but Rafe's right behind him searching too. But this is kind of perplexing because Rafe has a lot of resources, as he says earlier. I wonder why he doesn't use satellite imagery to see where Libertalia is. He knows the area where it is. It's not like there's trees covering it. Heck, why not get a helicopter? You can see it from the sky. Here on this island, the grand reveal is that Sam was lying the whole time. That actually, that Alcazar was dead the whole time. Which kind of makes me wonder. It's just like, oh, okay, why? Turns out Sam was working with Rafe, which begs the question on why turn on Rafe so early on in the hunt. Nate says that he believes Sam got every clue that Rafe had, except he just brought information about the cross. He didn't really bring any new information that Drake didn't know. He could have waited at the last moment and then brought Nate out. Anyways, if he spent such a long time also coming up with this Alcazar story, why didn't he come up with a guy who was actually alive? The guy died 6 months prior. Also, how come Rafe was able to find Sam? Nate said that he was looking for Sam but exhausted all of his resources, couldn't find him at all. He never got any confirmation that Sam died also, which is like, yeah, it's kind of suspicious. There's a slow burn of internal conflicts, but after the revelation and subsequent abyss, there's not really a payoff. There's no resolving of these conflicts. There's no transformation in those ideas that were earlier slowly built. Its conflicts just dropped out of the game. The boss fight at the end of the game was repetitive and janky. It was just a modified QuickTime event. The actual conflict just seemed very contradictory. All Rafe wanted to do was earn something for himself, which he did when he found the treasure. Why couldn't Rafe just take credit for this treasure and Sam a cut of the fine? But of course, this game wants to make it seem like Rafe is a crazy guy, even though it just really doesn't seem like his character. Yeah, Naughty Dog wants you to think that it's just because Sam wanted to share his find with his brother as being just a part of the family. The actual plot of Libertalia is actually very interesting because it somewhat relates to Nate. Libertalia is a city founded by pirates who wanted to settle down and create a life for themselves, just like what Nate was trying to do. But greed ultimately caused the whole settlement to erupt in a civil war and cause everyone to kill each other. The last two people, the founders, couldn't even agree on splitting the treasure, so they killed each other. Nate sees this as his future if he was to continue treasure hunting, except you wouldn't be able to tell this on your first playthrough in the game. And yet he still later on allows his brother and his friend to continue with their pirate ways, because there's gotta be a sequel, of course. The third act of this game just plays like pretty much any other Uncharted game that would be fun if it wasn't trying to retire a character. The game ends like any other Uncharted game, but then it continues, because it would be a shame if the audience still had any questions about what Nate was going to do with his life. And then the game continues from what would be an alright ending, because it would be a shame to wonder what would happen next to Nate. The game starts into a nostalgia-filled epilogue that's basically Naughty Dog just saying, hey, look at where we started, and now look at where we are today. Naughty Dog causes the player to remember the journey that they had with the company, as I have since the very beginning, and look forward towards their future. The thing is that if you're not affected by nostalgia like me, this ending comes off really badly and non-satisfactory. It doesn't really feel like closure to me, because they really heavily allude to another game starring Sully and Sam Drake. The ending feels more like it's Naughty Dog that's leaving the series, not Nate. I do commend Naughty Dog for not killing off Nate, as you know that's not the only way to retire a character, contrary to modern narrative. I know that many people are satisfied with the ending, but the ending felt like it was missing something and was definitely not the controversial conversation starter teased by Druckmann. It's almost too safe. Uncharted 4 is a game about balancing Nate's passions and spending time with those he cares about. It's about greed versus pride, lies versus truth, the past versus the future, and the game really doesn't really tackle all these topics. This game is overly long and just drags on. But of course, this game is going to be trotted out as Game of the Year. Game of the Year that justifies the current console generation. And I'm not saying that this game is bad, I'm just saying that it's not as good as it could have been. It makes me wonder what was in the original script that longtime series creator and creative director Amy Hennig had in mind. The very original script that Alan Tudyk was involved in and then had him leave when it changed. The script was thrown out and reworked from scratch. I'm just really disappointed in this game as a longtime fan of the series. I just wish that I got the satisfactory ending that Nate deserves. But instead of this, we get something that's not really satisfactory. I mean, a lot of people are gonna cry like what Neil Druckmann said, but I mean, for me, it really didn't do anything for me. This game seems like very non-memorable. I really dare everyone to come back in a year and tell me the plot for this game. But then again, what do I know? I'm just a sponge.